I make a motion to start the meeting. Second? Okay, do we need a second? Oh, I didn't put my mic on, didn't I? Oh,
No,
okay.
I can hear you. We heard you, Janet. We
Okay,
can hear you. Anybody want a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Can we take a roll call? We'll do a roll call vote starting with Rachel and going in clockwise.
Aye.
Janet, yes.
Present, aye. Yes.
Okay. Michael?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
Laura?
Who's next?
Yes. Okay. And then James.
Aye.
Okay. All right. So the meeting is officially open. Excellent timing, 7:04. Great to see everybody here. And I let's just start with the agenda. So welcome. We were having a little chat before the meeting officially opened about solar panels and such things. And just to follow up for a moment on that issue, listening to On Point today when they were talking about, as you may have noticed in the news, Maricopa County, Arizona, which is where Phoenix is, has now had 100 straight days reaching 100 degrees and over, which is causing very serious public health consequences and many deaths. And emergency rooms physicians said it's like they're in an epidemic. So that's what obviously extreme heat does, which is very devastating. Okay, so I think I had first on the agenda was the review of minutes, and we actually have two sets of minutes. Thank you, Rachel. And maybe we'll just take them one at a time, starting with the older set of minutes, which is for the meeting on August 19th. Does anybody have any potential edits to the minutes or comments or anything they want to add from the minutes from August 19th? Hearing none, does anybody want to make a motion?
I make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Any second? Anybody want to second the motion?
Second.
Okay. If we could do the roll call, then starting with Rachel.
Aye.
Janet, yes.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Michael?
Yes.
Yes.
Laura, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so those set of minutes are adopted from August 19th. And then the second set of minutes, which Rachel prepared for us, are dated August 28th meeting. Does anybody have any, I see a typo on paragraph number 2, which is the word open meeting. It's missing the N on that first sentence in paragraph 2. Anybody have any other edits, proposed edits to the August 28th minutes?
Motion to adopt.
Okay, anybody want to second the motion?
Second.
Okay, we can vote starting with Rachel.
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Michael?
Yes.
Yes.
Laura, aye.
And James? Okay, all right, so we have now adopted 2 sets of minutes. Very well, appreciate everybody moving through that quickly. And now I pull out my agenda here. Okay, so I'm happy to report about the Select Board presentation of the interim recommendations, and I have a witness, which was Rachel was with me by my side, which is very much appreciated. It was a lengthy evening until they got to us, and I will have to give the Select Board a credit for what I see is like an amazing amount of patience with whatever issue is dealing before them. So again, I had to watch it. Quite a number of things were on the agenda and public comment happened beforehand. Anyways, they eventually got to us and we went over all the items on the interim recommendations, including the resolution. I would say that the board did not have a lot of questions. They specifically, I gave a little background for each of the things, or a little of our thought process behind it. There was a little bit of discussion, I remember specifically about that, the town warrant electronic or default, or hard copy. And we certainly made it clear that the hard copy is still the default, but they really need to be clear that there is an electronic only option. And, we'd have to follow up on that to make sure that gets implemented. And as I said, that's a save for the town. It's going to save time and save mailing costs. And I remember Mr. Cavey saying, to him, he just looks at the price of the mailing and he doesn't actually want it. He prefers his to be electronic. So everybody's going to have their own preference. I will say my memory is the takeaway is that, Select Chair Cavey said that he thought that our recommendations were a light touch. I think that was an acknowledgement of we were trying not to be too onerous or go too far or ask for things that were unrealistic. Rachel spoke about the anti-idling, which I think went over just fine. Nobody seemed to have any questions or problems. So there was a vote, and there were 4 people present. Mr. McCrisky was not present at the meeting that night at all. But the vote was 4-0 in favor of adopting all our recommendations and our resolution.
As written. So
yes, as written, they did not even want to revise anything whatsoever. So obviously, the next step is implementation, which I think we will, strategize about making sure that these recommendations mean something. I actually have forwarded it to Trish Shropshire, who was at the meeting tonight, to ask her to post it on our website. So I should follow up and see that it's there. If anybody actually is active on Facebook and wants to put it there, and maybe that's getting to our issue later on the agenda about social media, so maybe we can defer that. But anybody have Rachel, anything you want to add about the impressions of the select board? And actually, Mr. Coulter had left the meeting by the time we were presenting, so he was not present.
Yeah, so Mr. Coulter had a very busy day, I think. They were very welcoming and warm about it. They were appreciative that we lasted so long. And it was just, we'd done a very good job, and we'd stressed a lot of different points. I think for me, I am always going to harp on the economic issue as being something that is something that's very tangible for people to think about, especially people who have to oversee the budget. And the economics of shifting to solar and renewable energy is just, besides being the right thing to do, it's the best thing to do for your pocketbook. So like economically efficient is really a great thing. I think the other key thing that I noted is that they really appreciated when I said that I wanted the transitions to be as frictionless as possible. And it might be better for the environment, strictly speaking, if we said you have to have paperless warrants because that's paper and things. But I think people are going to people enjoy having choice. People enjoy not being forced into something, and people can slowly adopt as things are comfortable. So I push for opt-in of electronic as opposed to opt-in being the default, because people in town meeting would not like that choice being taken away from them. I want people to have choices, and I want people to feel like it's not being shoved down their throat, but instead it's like an expansion of the possibilities. And I could see especially the economic argument resonating. The optimism is resonating as well. And that's something that's really important. We're winning, honestly, the fight on fossil fuels. I was saying before the meeting, the EU now has more energy generated from renewables than it does from fossil fuels. That number is going down. Solar power is increasing. The use of solar power is increasing far beyond any even optimistic expectations. The expectation of the mean temperature rise by 2050 is lower than it used to be. It's still a rise, but we're getting there. We have made an effort, and it is not as dire as it once seems. It's not as terrifying as it seems. We are shifting to a better, more resilient way of life. And that's a very optimistic message, and that's one that resonates and I think makes people a little more open, as opposed to being like, well, if we're all doomed by 2050 anyway, might as well, crank the AC. And also, as more people are doing these things, that normalizes it in a way. Yeah. And I think that's also something leading by example. I pointed out, I've done the heat pump. I have solar panels on my house. I'm signing up for Black Earth Compost. I am putting my money where my mouth is. And I'm not asking anyone to do anything that I want to do myself. And I think that is as a very practical matter, people are going to appreciate that we are living our examples as opposed to rule for you, private jet for me.
Exactly. Yeah, I got rid of my private jet a few years ago. So
yeah, it was just such a bother.
I'm good on that. So does anybody have any questions or comments about the interim recommendations and the select board presentation? Happy to take questions. Your thoughts? Honestly, I was scared for like a little pushback. So it was nice to have people who are open-minded and receptive and interested actually. And one of the things I felt like I was seeing everybody nod in agreement as I read talked about the recycling and the composting and read a note from a very recent article in the Globe which actually focused on oyster shells, but they were saying that by 2030 like a ton more landfills are going to close in Massachusetts. We're already shipping 20% of our waste out of state. You talk about a waste of fossil fuels. We're putting things in trucks, driving them out of state rather than reducing the waste stream. So I could just see everybody like nodding in agreement. And quite frankly, even if you're not really into climate change per se, I think as a municipal official, you get the solid waste issue. Like, where's it going to go? So we need to sort of change course a little bit and make sure we are reducing our solid waste in every way we can. So any event.
It sounds like you guys were really, really thoughtful I know you guys are thoughtful and I know everyone's been thoughtful in putting together the recommendations, but I think also just seeing the thoughtfulness and how things were presented and exactly what you were just saying, Rachel. I think when we first went to town meeting with the idea of this committee, people were concerned we were going to put windmills in their yards and, and this is just finally showing what it really is versus what people's worst nightmare of it is. And I think it goes a long way, especially taking these kind of incremental steps, but they're still real steps. And if they think it was light touch, then, hey, that tells me that, if we're successful with this, then let's try pushing the envelope a little bit more. But that doesn't mean doing what Rachel was saying, where you're just trying to, shove this stuff down people's throats. I think that the choice people making does help them get more invested in the issue itself.
Yeah.
Right.
I said a couple of times. Sorry.
Yeah.
I guess I'm sort of reiterating, and I don't know if some people heard that we did get solar panels at the beginning of this year, but I think what happened, like increments, like when I started recycling baby food jars, I didn't know about that because when I lived in Bellingham, they didn't have curbside recycling. So, but I think as things progress, you just do things little by little, you just, and I have my husband who thinks, a little doesn't do very much, but everything adds up. It's all, I know not all of us do everything. Yeah. But, and we make mistakes and all that. But I think it's just that we have to be a community and do what Rachel and Laura said and all of us, I think, say that we just all have to work together and just do those little things. And then, we will do the big things in the town and across the country and the world and all that good stuff. But I was just telling them earlier that I don't have my electric bills have gone to zero. And I'm not even owning the solar panels. I'm leasing them. So it's really a nice thing because I had very expensive electric bills at the beginning of this year.
Wow.
So, exorbitant. I had not seen that in many winters. It was just, I don't know what happened. Mm-hmm. So I think with the composting and with the recycling and anything you can do, and just passing the word too, that it isn't that hard, and, we'll work together and we'll promote it,
Right.
In very light ways, not just, like you said, do it,
I just wanted to follow up on Laura's very nice comments there and say, I honestly felt that we had done a good job as a deliberative body going over these recommendations in at least 2 meetings, including some of which rejected my recommendations. And that's great because that's why, 5, 6, 7 brains are definitely better than one. And I think we ultimately through that process came up with a really balanced approach, which actually was a successful approach. That's why I'm so grateful for everybody on this committee. And their thoughts about that.
I've used the line a couple of times and I think it actually does help. We're not going to make Stoughton look like the Jetsons. People are afraid of this super futuristic, because the town has character. People don't like big changes like that. We're not going to do anything that is going to drastically change the character of the town. We're not going to force people to make changes. We are saying that in the growth that is happening already, let's make sure that it is done in an economically efficient and environmentally efficient way. And with an eye to also including this resilience to climate change and the adaptations as well.
Right.
So it's not
Excellent.
a massive change. It's more of a gentle restructuring in some ways.
Thank you. Good spokesperson, Rachel, and I heard good comments about your presentation from the select board, one of the select board members, so that's great. If there's nothing else on that issue, want to move on to the climate audit tool issue, which I have to, this is actually pretty complex. If you just glance through it, it was written by Francelis a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. It was not an attachment. It was like a link. It was one of those Google Doc things, which I'm not terribly comfortable with working with, but it seems to work. So I spent a long time on the phone with James. James helped me with many of the questions or pointed out who we should go to for the answers. They're very detailed and technical. And then I just spent some time on the phone with Kathy Stanley today answering some of those questions, which seemed to fall within her ballpark. So I think we're like 2/3 to 3/4 there. I think I still probably need to talk to Bill Roth and then see if anything's left over after I talk to him. So that's next on the list. So MAPC is not here, but if they happen to check in, they can see we're definitely starting to make progress on that. And it also shows, and I did say to the select board, once it gets completed, I'd love to send it to the select board just so they can see kind of the multifaceted elements of, having a climate action plan and taking steps forward to be a more sustainable community. Because again, it's very much in depth. It's very technical.
Can I add something to that, Molly? I was thinking about this in terms of your presentation to the select board, and one of the things that, when you're talking about your recommendations, you don't necessarily get to show is all of the community outreach that the committee has done, and that has value in and of itself. So it might not be like an initiative of, composting or something like that, but going back to what Rachel was saying about kind of shifting the narrative and being more positive and being inclusive of the community, I want to make sure that gets demonstrated too in some of these other forums, because that's been a huge amount of work that's gone on. And I think that has a massive impact on the overall success, not only of the committee, but what the final product is going to be in the future of our town.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that leads actually unless James wants to add something about the climate audit tool, I was going to move to the stakeholder list, which I will say I haven't had a chance to look at it again very recently. I know I had enlisted Rachel to help with some help, but I don't know if other people have added things to that tool. Again, it's the same email from Francelis as far as organizations or businesses. Rachel?
I have not been able to add to the list yet. I can start doing that this week, Wednesday and Friday, but I do have the contact information for all of the PTOs, and I am going to be presenting at Gibbons on Wednesday night, the Gibbons PTA. And I would actually really love to touch base with you beforehand so that I know that I'm going to bring the right things. I was thinking maybe we bring up the survey, ask people to take it, to see what their knowledge of the town is, because that could be used in the report, and that's also a really good thing for us to have. And just kind of feeling people out on that. I just want to touch base the next couple of days before I present.
No, that's fine, and I should be good on Wednesday. And one of the things is, we have had our handouts. It's always good to the handout of tips. Here's some climate action tips. But what I think would be really great, which we haven't had a lot of opportunity to do, is to have like the back and forth. Like, what are you thinking about this? Do you think about it? Do you worry about it? Do you consider steps to take it? And I feel like there's some people out there who are like, it's on my mind. I'm thinking about it. I'm worried about it. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's the most effective thing, or I don't know it's probably not the thing that I can do that I can afford, or it might be, or maybe they don't want to talk about their financial situation, but whatever. I would love to hear, we know that there's people hostile. So aside from those viewpoints, from the people who are like a little bit more neutral or on the fence or actually concerned but not really taking any action, it would be great to hear from them just some feedback, because that might help guide us in how we can be effective and really, getting some momentum to people taking action steps. So yeah, and I'll forward you one of our flyers that you can deliver as well, but we can touch base, and then we'll try to remember to put that on the agenda for next week, so you can just sort of report back. But that's great. Any other thoughts about the stakeholder list? Or again, I wish I had contacts with more businesses.
And did you get my email? I found out who is the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, you have an email to contact them. I feel like I may have reached out to the joint one.
Yeah.
I have to double check what I found with what you sent me about and I'm making myself a note to follow up with the Chamber of Commerce email.
So Soden does not have a Chamber of Commerce anymore. It merged with Randolph's, and then a year or so ago, it merged into a different one altogether. So it's now like South Shore in general. So that's why we couldn't find a business contact. That's why no one could find out.
Okay. All right. And then honestly, if they ever have meetings where, there's 20 people at the meeting, I think it would be great to show up, take 10 minutes of their time, give them some of our handouts. And I do believe that for businesses, there's probably tons of federal and state incentives as well. I mean, people may not be aware, maybe now's the time to upgrade your HVAC system at your business because look, you get this tax break or you get this or whatever it may be. Again, and obviously, and I also need to, I have it on the list, IKEA, and my contact at IKEA. I need to circle back with her about, does IKEA want to sponsor something meaningful in the business community that might get some discussion going? Again, they've got a huge solar array. They've got, quite frankly, sustainability messages all over their business, all over their store. So it would be great if they can influence some of the other, whether it's the bigger stores or whoever it may be, it would be great. But they also have composting at their restaurant. I mean, if more restaurants that could have composting, that would be great. All right. So if we're ready to move on, stop me if I'm moving too fast. Employing social media. So Rachel requested we put this on the agenda, which is a reminder. Anytime you want something on the agenda, please let me know like 10 days in advance or so that or at least a week in advance. So what are your thoughts about social media?
Essentially, we discussed having a social media presence and early on, and I feel like we never finalized that. My idea is that we really need to just have like a Facebook page that we can post. We can repost things. We can send things to the town crier. We can post about, hey, the interim recommendations passed. We could post links to the survey and asking what people think. We could post little snippets. And this is also a great way to, going down to step 7, getting some kids from the high school involved. Because I know Facebook. I also know high schoolers don't use Facebook. I know younger people do not use Facebook in the same way. And we want to reach out to different groups. So I think high schoolers may be more able to figure out ways to get younger folk involved. So I would like to request an intern from them or an internship.
So what do people think about Facebook? And let me just give you my caveat, which is, other than when I ran for school committee, very briefly, I've never been on Facebook. Don't really understand how it works. My only concern or point for discussion is it tends to be like, first of all, people get themselves in trouble either because they're reposting something which is either, injudicious or not appropriate, or because there's back and forth with comments. So concerns, we would want to provide information if somebody has a question about something like, what do you think about, this solar, whatever it may be, but we don't want conflicting, disputatious, contentious, ugly back and forth. So I don't know how we would manage that. Thoughts, Michael, about that?
Well, first of all, the idea behind social media is that it is social. It is all about back and forth. It's not about one direction, which leads to the second issue is that if it's a very blasé page, you're not going to get a lot of that. However, because there is controversy in town about this, it would require an administrator, and you can put up certain guidelines. In other words, we allow conflicting opinions, we allow challenges, et cetera, but the basic guidelines are usually, no obscenities, no personal attacks, et cetera, et cetera. You have to maintain a certain level of decorum. You can find these on almost every group Facebook page has them. However, you are going to get argument, pushback, et cetera, and that's the nature of the beast. It's going to be the same thing on Instagram, and it's going to be the same thing on TikTok. That's what social is about. Otherwise, you want a one-way. So the main thing is the problem is with Facebook, and I'm not quite sure how it's managed on TikTok, but on Facebook, you're going to need an administrator who's going to be checking in quite regularly.
Right.
Two different things. First of all, just to, and you can block people. Always an option. Usually give them one chance, and then, second chance to block. But you would need them to, A, clean out any really nasty or disparaging remarks, and B, to clean out spam, because what's happening with Facebook anymore is that people, both personal and group pages, are being flooded with spam. It's been, I'm on a number of, I'm probably on 150, 200 different groups, and half of them, people say, I don't even want, but by the end of the day, there's 20 posts now just flooding in. You can exercise some degree of control, but somebody is going to have to volunteer to administrate, to be an administrator and to keep an eye on things, because it will get out of hand very quickly. And you don't want it looking like the Stoughton News page.
No. So I
like it, however. I think it's worth it.
But let me let Laura and James weigh in. I have a whole lot of reservations. But
Well, so one thing, and this goes to what Michael was just saying about there are ways of exercising control. So you can turn comments off and things like that. I think it also speaks to Michael's point, though, is what do we want this to be? If we want it to just be information out, then you might as well just have a website where you're posting stuff. But if you want that dialogue, then you are going to open yourself up for dissenters, which I don't think is a bad thing. We're not afraid of dissenters, but we do, based on the Stoughton News page, know what kinds of rabbit holes those can get down. And then in those circumstances, someone can go in and turn off comments. So I think it depends on what are we trying to do through this. Is it a true social, two-way channel? Or is it really just an opportunity to push information out that might be more usable than going to a formal web page or something?
Right.
So what I'm thinking of, so a couple of things. One is I personally ran social media for a nonprofit that was generally very to the point, but had a very strong extremist factions on both the left and the right wing that would frequently attack it. So I do know how to respond and cool the temperature on that kind of thing. And now Facebook actually has a feature where you have to be following the page for a certain amount of time. I've noticed that the Stoughton schools use this system. So I would actually, I understand why Michael's point about it being a two-way conversation would make it more interesting. I also think that a lot of it would be more for the ability to share to different groups more easily, having a page for maintaining that, putting it all there, and having something that is easily shareable around the people of Stoughton. So it is more for awareness than this is where we want people to be talking, but we also need to have more people aware of our presence and also to have that reciprocal exchange with other groups. A lot of people in Stoughton have a page or go on Facebook a lot. And so not having a page there limits our ability to be in the conversation. I volunteer as the administrator. I didn't want to do this last year. I think now I'm in a better place to be able to. And again, it is fairly easy to shut down a contentious discussion by being polite, being kind, being firm about where not you're going to get in the discussion. And I know how to do that as a public face of a public page as opposed to my personal page, getting into it. It is it is a different skill set than people usually use when they are using their own pages. So I do expect some attacks. I also expect to highly, highly moderate the ability of people to post on it at first.
Don't you always I notice on pages, 'cause I know I'm on a group, females over 50, they have rules. A lot of times they'll have rules on there. And you're right, you're going to get that anyway. But I mean, I think you just put your basic idea of how people should be toward one another. And it isn't, I don't think we're using it totally as a social media, but people do give opinions because that's what people do. And we notice that even in meetings, people do that. So we can't not, expect it. But like, like you said, you know how to handle it. And you can block people, just we don't want them to think they can't say anything because we want them, this is a community. But we don't want it to be like back and forth, either. We just want it to
engaging with the sincere people.
I'm sorry?
It is engaging with people in good faith who remain in good faith. The people who are not in good faith will not get the response they want because what they want is the engagement. Right,
because just like you said about the meeting you just had, it was a very positive experience, and that's what we're looking for. And that doesn't mean, people don't disagree. It just means, you do it in a respectful and, you just minimize it and make it, appropriate, not just to pick on someone or call someone names or whatever. It's really just, this is, we all have those social pages. We don't need those. But,
Michael had another comment.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, the advantage is that if you just go with the one direction, if you put up websites and all, people don't go to websites anymore.
Yeah.
The only time I go to a website is I'm looking for something very specific from that website.
Right.
Whereas with social media, things come up in the news feed all the time.
Yeah.
So you're sucked into all these different groups and all these different discussions. A lot of people use, I can't tell you how many, probably thousands of hours I have wasted on Facebook over the last 20 years. And a lot of it is just,
Michael, you said it for me.
I have 15 minutes free time. I fire it up, scroll through. Oh, somebody said something interesting. I'm going to comment on that. I don't like I used to. A lot of people have gotten a lot more bored. I don't use it nearly like I used to. It's kind of faded. A lot of people are using it a lot less. Especially as Rachel said, nobody under 30 uses it. I remember my kids first told me, "You're on Facebook. That's for younger people."
No.
The opposite. It's geriatric. For people like me who have nothing better to do with their free time.
You can also do events.
My point is that people are trained now. People don't want one-way media. They want to be able to participate, and they're much more likely to, the drawback is you get people who don't agree with you. So what?
Right.
It's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
The advantage is, though, people will see it. Nobody's going to see your website, but if you put put this Facebook page up, you get 100 people, you get 200 people, and it's going to start popping up left and right in people's news feeds constantly. They're going to be aware of what you're saying, whether they want to or not. But otherwise, if you just go with websites and things anymore, you're basically just walling yourself off in your basement.
Yeah.
Events too. I was thinking of events, whether it be our events and sometimes events in other towns or just places to look for information. Maybe if someone has a question, they need an explanation. Maybe we've given it to them, but maybe they just want a little more elaboration on it. Whatever it is, it's just nice to know what's going on. I forget who it was in this group, but she had a site that she gave me that told me what was going on in the world and just different things, and it was just really interesting. But anything positive you can give,
I would also like to share some positive news about things with it. And again, I understand there's a trade back and there's also the algorithm to consider. But I think that as just a matter of sanity, the best use of a Facebook page would be to provide information and a minimum at some points when appropriate and when we have the ability to do it, of some dialogue, but not no one's going to be using this account and going into Stoughton News and engaging. So if people do come to the page, I think that would be unprofessional. That would
so you have to understand you're going to get lies. You're going to get lies immediately.
Yep.
And people
are going to be mad if they get lies.
The liars are going to come and they're going to promulgate lies.
Yes. and they will be very upset, and they will start talking about their First Amendment rights as soon as they cannot comment anymore. That's not where I am going to there's nothing to be gained by keeping people on Facebook as opposed to having people meet in real life and talking about things there, because people are generally nicer in real life, but there is a very good organizing quality in Facebook that I think for getting to the next level of the stakeholder list, for getting people who are interested but don't know how to approach us, which has happened a couple of times when I posted about being on the climate action plan, that people have when I have actually posted in Soda News, there have been people who I've met through that who have had recommendations or things that they wanted. Limited engagement in that way. But as a page, I think it would be useful for us to have something there are lots and lots of pages, and probably will not get the most engagement unless there is a battery, but also they want attention. And if you limit their ability to comment and to get that immediate dopamine feedback, they stop commenting.
Frank, when you talk about limiting their ability,
what are
you getting at?
The Stoughton School website has a thing where you have to be a follower for 24 hours before you comment. You can limit your ability to post much more better than you could before. So that limits the kind of the drive-by.
James has a comment?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hello. Yes, thank you very much, Molly. I was just wondering, are we stepping out of our lane and having our own exclusive Facebook page? Is there language in our mission statement or our town meeting article to warrant and support an educational outreach feature of an interactive Facebook page? I'm just wondering, that's my first question. I think if that's confirmed, well, we should determine that one way or another. In addition to that, I would advise that, not to be a curmudgeon, but I would advise that we're totally transparent. Get Tom Coulter's take on this and to let him know what we would like to do, get his opinion or blessing or support. He may give us some guidance or one way or another, but at least that we'll have a direction after speaking with him, and then we'll let him know that we're planning on doing this, and it's not a surprise to anybody. In addition, we know that this will be a target for naysayers and folks that are opponents of the mission of the Climate Action Committee and climate change as well. So we know there's going to be, like I say, arguments going on. It's going to be spirited, I believe. And I know that there will be supporters of our mission as well that would engage with this. But I just think those are some concerns that we need to look at. And I think we shouldn't do this without speaking with Tom and just letting him know this is something we wish to do, and then go from there.
So, James, I was thinking along the same lines of sort of running this by the powers that be. I was also curious whether any other town committees have Facebook pages. Mm-hmm. And I know very familiar with the school doing it, and there's all sorts of reasons the school, it's important to interact with the families and to share information on Facebook.
I believe Tom has his own, actually.
Tom has his own. The town clerk has their own. The Department of Public Works has their own. The police have their own. I'm just trying to think. But again, this is more about making sure that we're finding community stakeholders and finding out what they're concerned about, as opposed and getting that feedback from people who can't show up to the meetings, for example, or have only seen us on Slack. Giving people a little bit of an easier way to communicate to us, not necessarily in a public way. Getting messages is a way. I would not want this page to be engaged in, I do not have any interest in having a page engaging with people in bad faith arguments. I don't think that's a good use of anyone's time. I think that we have a page that we can use to, like the Stoughton Day page, or host an event and invite other pages and just kind of reach out to people on Facebook who aren't necessarily going to be able to see a flyer necessarily in the same way and have it be much more easy to reach out.
So I agree with James.
Go ahead, Laura. Please go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, I agree with James in terms of checking in with other, town leaders and just kind of like pressure test the idea. But I also know that we could try it. And if it didn't work out the way we wanted it to, we could just take it down. So it's not a long-term commitment. That's the nice thing about social media. It's there one day and it's gone the next. Look at MySpace, which shows my knowledge about social media. But, I think that there's ways to mitigate risk. But on the flip side of that, I would want to make sure that we're clear on how the Facebook page would support our mission. I think if we can make a good argument for that and then do kind of a risk-benefit analysis to say, like, look, we're having trouble reaching people, or people don't feel like they have anywhere to go to find this information, and that's one of our kind of strategic imperatives in what we're trying to do. I think we can justify it as it being important for our mission, but then that would also help us decide, like, when it's not working. Are you spending more time, Rachel, fighting off negative comments versus even having time to post resources or, things like that? Or is it getting too personal, or people feeling attacked or whatever?
And you can turn off commenting altogether in that case.
Yes. Yeah.
And that might be something to do just if I realize I'm not having time for it. And yeah, I agree. Like, it can be shut down at any time. We need ways to hear from the community that aren't necessarily just who we know and who we can reach out to. There are a lot of people who just aren't connected, and Facebook is a good way of reaching them in a way that we aren't currently reaching people necessarily.
And also, if you have a Facebook page like that, you can then be admitted into other groups like the enthusiasts, like the Stoughton News, etc. Using that rather than us as individuals.
Yeah.
You can subscribe as a group.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you've got the 10,000 people on Stoughton News and the 4,000 people or whatever it is now on the enthusiasts. There's no other way to reach them unless you're putting, paying for circulars in the shopper or whatever.
Right.
And I don't know how you can just turn your back on the opportunity not to reach literally 10,000 people that you're not going to reach otherwise. This has been around for 20, this is nothing new. This has been around for 20 years.
I've been on
If
Facebook
anything, as we know, it's kind of Facebook itself. It's kind of on the downside now. So it's not like this is some, new technology that we're not familiar with or anything. A number of us have been running all kinds of pages for many, many years. We've dealt with this. And I don't think you can be afraid of the negative comments, the lies, etc. We can't just keep retreating because people disagree with us. On the other hand, though, we don't have to be involved. Basically, if Rachel posts something, and I assume that she'll probably wind up posting more, I'll certainly contribute. But, if she winds up posting things, people disagree with it. We don't say anything. You let them hash it out. We don't get involved. We don't, get involved with a back and forth. Let the community do that. If it gets nasty and personal, then you shut it down or you send an advisory out. Hey, knock it off. And if it continues, boom. But I think what you're going to find is you will certainly find out, if you don't know them already, who your opponents are. But you are also going to find out a lot. The other thing you're going to find out, you have a lot of friends and who they are, and who will likely want to join you.
Yeah, that has been my experience every time that I've waded into a discussion on Stoughton. It's like I make news friends in Stoughton from that. And you find out who is interested in what you're doing. And I think that's
Continue on Stoughton News. I don't go near it anymore. It's just too much for me. I think I admire your guts going in there, but it's the enthusiast I will sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, my takeaway, and I think everybody's made some really good comments. I think we definitely can square it with our mission, because community engagement is like, as we heard from MAPC, it is like step one. I'm actually going to reach out with an email to MAPC and just say, I'm interested in your thoughts. Is it common for climate action plan committees to have Facebook pages? How has that been working? Has that been problematic? I'm certainly moved by Michael's suggestion that we could reach thousands of more people, because it is really hard to get people to actually come to you or to get the message. It's not even putting it in the suburban shopper. It's like, we'd have to send 10,000 letters to people to actually get maybe the type of information or the response. So, I guess I'm open-minded about it, which is hard for me to be open-minded about social media. But Michael's been very convincing. But I definitely will reach out to Tom Coulter and maybe some others, and also MAPC, just sort of read the room of, has this been a productive way to really generate, knowledge and enthusiasm. And you're right. I mean, as I mentioned to somebody recently, we don't, for whatever it was worth, we don't even have a town paper anymore.
Yeah,
and
right.
A little bit of something.
What would be good, Molly, is not just look within our town, but to see if other climate action plan committees have Facebook sites or
Like
other
the Sustainable
sites.
Steering Commission is something we've looked at.
But we've got all those climate action plans from other towns. Like, we could easily find out if they have Facebook groups or Facebook sites and just see how they're utilized.
And I can actually ask my counterpart in Canton, because they're the same stage. So I'm going to make myself a note about asking Tom.
And I have teenage children who I can put on the task of searching for Facebook pages as like a retro project for them.
Step back in time.
I just took a quick look on Facebook.
Yeah.
Go on Facebook, if you remember, search Climate Action Plan, and watch how many hundreds of Climate Action Plan groups have Facebook pages.
Yep, that's
And
right.
how much
As I figured, it just immediately populates.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think it's a big undertaking. If we proceed down this path, obviously we'll put it on the agenda for next time. It would be a big undertaking for Rachel, but I think Rachel would sort of, as Laura said, it's not like a permanent thing if it turns out to be too much of an undertaking, because Rachel is so useful in so many ways to the committee.
Oh, yeah.
We don't want her to get overwhelmed by that one task, but you could touch base with it in 6 months and see how it's working, and whether it's because I can guarantee you I'm not going near it.
Well, you might be able to do co-administrators too. So I've done the same thing for the startup company that I co-founded, and I was like the administrator for Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can really do as much or as little with it as you want, and you can kind of control like the flow of information. So I agree. I'm not trying to minimize the commitment, but if Rachel's willing to, be point on this, I'm sure we could also be co-administrators and takes, kind of share the responsibility. Yeah.
I would actually, I think MAPC being on, hearing from them would actually like really reassure me. And if they say like, don't do it, I would take that into account.
Okay.
But because it is just, there's too many people on Stoughton who can only be reached this way so far.
Yeah. Yep.
So. Okay.
Does that make sense to everybody? And again, we'll put it on the agenda again for next meeting to further discuss. That was
great.
Thanks for asking to put that on the agenda, Rachel. That was great. All right. School outreach. I think Rachel has already talked about speaking to the Gibbons PTO. I have reached out to Ms. Miller at the high school, and actually I sent a copy of our adopted interim recommendations to Dr. Bayetta and to Ms. Miller and to the chair of the school committee, because those recommendations touch upon the schools to a certain extent so that they're in the loop, and hopefully we're moving forward collectively as one town, and the right and the left hand should be, coordinated with what they're doing. So hopefully, and I'll actually need to specifically invite, there's a couple of students I've been in touch with, and the recycling club, making myself a note. I need to specifically invite them to our next meeting. So I'm making myself a note now. It's always a to-do. All right. Okay. And other business that cannot be anticipated. I just have a couple of updates and mention of events. So we were supposed to hear back about the EEA grant at the end of August. Have not heard back. I emailed our friends at MAPC. They had not heard back either. So the minute we have a decision, I will shoot everybody an FYI email. I hope it's certainly going to be very soon. And I also have not heard back from MAPC as to what sort of their next step is, which I think would be some type of community engagement proposition. But again, we're still trying to finalize the climate audit tool and also the stakeholder list.
Right.
Two events that are upcoming, which are of interest, is Stoughton Day. So I think I'm going to actually, our group and or the Energy Sustainability Committee will get a table. So there will be a table. We can be there. We can be there with our surveys. We can be there with their handouts. At Saturday, September 28th. I believe it's 11 o'clock to 3. Multiple people are invited, if they can, to be at the table and be ready to, engage with people and sort of raise our profile as to what we're doing, talk about climate change, hand out our tips, our action steps, talk about whatever people might be interested on those steps. It was actually a good turnout and it was valuable last year. And Ayesha was with me. And again, she knows, it actually helps to be somebody like Ayesha because she knows a ton of people. Like she knew so many people that really drew them to our table. So anybody who might still have kids in the school system, that would be a good thing to go to. And the other thing I sent everybody an email on is I am on the Sharon Sustainability Coalition, sent their information about their sustainability event, which is Sunday, the 29th. So the very next day, I believe it's at Sharon High School, but everybody's got that email. They have like a really, really good, robust movement in Sharon. And I think I've been to their event, at least one of their events before, and it's really kind of inspirational as to, who they have there, the vendors they have there, the amount of people who show up. I think it's always good to go and just sort of learn what somebody else is doing and how they are achieving success and getting people interested in these issues and getting people to take a look at these. So if I have time, I'll drop by. Anybody else, especially if you live more towards the Sharon side, go over there for half an hour, check it out, come back and report as to, what you saw and everything. I do remember when I went a couple of years ago, I was like, wow, how do you get so many people to show up? And the guy said to me, involve the schools. So the schools or the families are active. They're just active by nature and involved. And hopefully some of us can attend that and get some information from them. So those are my updates.
What date did you say Stoughton Day was? I'm sorry. September 20.
Saturday, September 28th. And I'll send everybody an email reminder and like a link to the page. And again, it was nice too. It was just nice to see other people. It was nice to see other vendors in town and stuff like that. It was a nice community event, quite frankly. That's the whole thing. You get to see people outside of town meeting, outside of the drudgery of town meeting, you might see, and chat with them. Again, I met the recycling club advisors and a couple of members of the recycling club last year. So it's all to the good. So that's September 28th on the Saturday, and I think it starts at 11 o'clock. So I'll get more information. Again, I'll register one or both of our organizations, and I'll have that nice banner there that we have for the Sustainability Committee, and maybe I should get a bowl full of candy to get people to come over, whatever.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I'll make cookies.
Okay.
It's at Halloran Park, it says. I just looked it up.
Yeah, I think so. Yep, last year. Again, it was just really nice. So that's all that I have. Is there anything else before we go on to the invitation for public comment? And James, yes.
Yes. Earlier in the meeting, we discussed our climate action audit tool and your wish to meet with town planner. I think that we also need to be mindful that we also need to meet with other boards, such as the Board of Health, perhaps the health agent, perhaps the chairman also, the planning board and the planning board chairman. I'm thinking, Molly, that perhaps you should try to meet, or maybe you and another member of the Climate Action Plan should meet with the planning board chairman as well as the town planner, and perhaps maybe the health agent and the chairman of the Board of Health, in order to discuss the questions that we had seen on the climate action tool that their board should be able to answer for us, or at least to help us educate them and put ideas in their mind as to the need, for instance, to revise regulations with climate resilience involved. Because I know the town planner is, he's updating planning board regulations. Conservation also needs to update their regulations, and that's going to be a very monumental project. However, we need to upgrade our regulations, make them more current and up to date. And just like with the state regulations that integrate climate action resiliency with respect to rules, regulations, and ways to qualify for grant projects. I just wanted to mention that as well, and offer my services if you'd like to meet with any of the chairmen of the board and planners or the health agent in order to move this forward. And also the town engineer, and
Okay.
also the DPW chairman, along with April Lahane sitting in at that meeting. Those are some folks we need to meet with to help us coordinate with municipal government, what the mission of the Climate Action Plan Committee is, and also to, recruit their support with respect to the work we're doing.
Thank you, and I appreciate those substantive suggestions. And I think if I do set up meetings or Zoom meetings or phone call meetings, I'll try to obviously include you, James. I did meet April Lahane. She was present for a library event this summer about solid waste and recycling and everything. So I have introduced myself to her, and that was terrific. And unfortunately, that was one of those things where like 5 people showed up and 3 of them were on the sustainability committee. So, but it was actually very informative. And Missy was there from DEP as well, as far as recycling things. I mean, I learned stuff that I didn't know. But yeah, April's definitely on board with all those issues as well. So we're going to put that on my notepad of to-do list. And I know you mentioned that before, and those are definitely big areas that we need to touch base with. I think the climate audit tool is actually maybe a good sort of introductory way to start talking to them, like, hey, I need to talk with you anyways. Can we set up a telephone call or whatever? And it actually does work really well that you can sort of just forward the Francelis email with the climate audit tool link, and then you can just both be looking at the same questions. That actually worked really well with Kathy today. It was totally convenient. So I'm going to put that on my to-do list in the coming weeks. All right. Anything else before we turn to public comment? And all right. Anyone here for public comment? I don't see anybody on my screen, but I always want to double check in case I'm missing something. All right, then. Would anybody like to make a motion about the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, starting with Rachel?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Michael?
Yes.
Yes?
Laura? Aye. Oh.
Okay. It looks like it's unanimous. Okay, the meeting adjourns at 8:05, 8:03, 8:05. Everybody have a great night. It was a great meeting.